Welcome everyone, Dr. Thor here, and get ready for Gnosis. Well, it's just come to my attention, and few people talk about it, but when it comes to using radionic instruments, and they are instruments, tools, etc., well, how easy is it to use them? How long does it take to learn how to use them? Well, let's cover the issue of these are not machines as most people understand a machine. Most tools, or what I prefer to call these, are instruments. What is an instrument? Well, I can give you guitar, and if someone knows how to use that guitar, they can make beautiful music. You just hand that to anybody, and it's going to sound terrible. Now, what does that mean? It's an instrument. You have to learn how to use it. And I think there's a lot of, I think it's fraud involved in the radionic industry, which is basically ran by a bunch of Satanists, misleading people of what these tools are. I mean, some people even misbrand their tools, calling them wish machines when they're 9-dial radionic units. So a wish machine is a non-dial unit that you just send energy in. It's a thought form amplifier. So it's important to understand that. So a lot of people are misinformed and don't know how to use these products. So when you buy from somebody, you better make sure you have good support from them, regardless of the cost of the item. Can they ask you questions? Do they get back to you? Is there adequate instructions? Now, IGOS is always helping anyone that buys from us, basically for lifetime. Our tools are lifetime plus, meaning the fact they're even good to give to your children and even serve as spirit communicators when you're on the other side. I mean, that's how advanced we are. But you've got to understand that these are not some sort of click-and-play toys. Plain and simple, that if you get a radionic machine and it has numerous dials on it, which is why we're moving away from dials, that you're going to have to tune those dials. I mean, there are some absurd units that don't even have numbers on the dials, so you have to count where that 1 to 10 dial is. That's how incompetent and horrible these are. And of course, they are copying units of mine that were produced 30 years ago. I mean, this is pretty horrific. Yet they've suckered a lot of people because they sell kind of inexpensive units. You got to remember, these inexpensive units, though, cost less than $20 to make. Probably more like $10. That's how inexpensive they are, that they sell for $200 in a crappy little box. I mean, this is very typical of the units that are made by Josh Warren and Dr. Moldar. These are junk. I've heard from many people that have gotten no results whatsoever. Plain and simple. They're not teaching people how to use them. The dials aren't numbered. They are radionic machines. And in general, not just to single them out in this area, if you're going to learn to work with a 9-dial instrument, you're going to have to learn how to use a pendulum or the stick process. Now, a stick pad is something that in general is nothing more than a pendulum type movement. So you have to tune these things in. So to do that takes skill and it takes time. You know, a lot of people, and we have courses on how to use pendulums and many pendulums, just can't do this. So the bottom line is that they have trouble with pendulums. They can't get pendulums to move. I don't know how many people I've given pendulums to, and they just can't work with them. They are not sensitive enough. So when you try and move them over to the stick pad method, well, they're going to have the same problems there as well. Now, a lot of people claim they get that, but sticking is so ballpark, so unclear when you use the stick pad or rubbing technique, that it could mean anything. But how easy is it to use an instrument in a general understanding? Well, the point is, it is not easy to do. You have to spend time and practice to tune it. So trying to tune 9 dials, and you have to tune each individual dial, and you have to make sure you tune them in sequence, meaning you go to dial 1, 2, 3, etc., and your machine better be marked so you know how to do that with, or how do you go in sequence, is something that you have to learn how to do, and it takes time. time, and it's going to take practice. And believe it or not, this kind of super sensing capacities is very fatiguing. It uses core energies. Now, our people can learn to do this, how dedicated, but it's not something you're going to instantly be able to do unless you can dowse, unless you've used pendulums and are easy. This is something easy for you. And these are things you have to understand before buying a unit. Now, what IGOS tries to do is to avoid dialing as much as possible. And of course, that's why true wishing machines were so popular. You just kind of put your picture in there in a thought form, and you were done. Now, these types of machines do work, but it's stronger if you tend to tune things in unless you have a strong witness that produces things. Now, this is why rate books are so popular in radionic circles. You'd get a rate book, which is the numbers you put into the dials, and you would use the machine, the radionic machine or instrument, more like a machine, meaning you would just tune in. You would look in the book and say, okay, this is for this, and you would turn the dials to those numbers, and you're done. And then you put your picture on there, and the energy is sent to you. That's why everybody loves rate books. Now, there really isn't much of this out there for metaphysical practices. Most rate books were dealing with vibrational healing energies. So they don't give you rate books. You don't get information like that. And from the training I've seen from most people, you don't get much training at all. There isn't there. So learning radionics, like learning so many things, is not necessarily difficult, but there's a certain factor of can you do it, period. And generally, people don't want tools they have to learn to use. They just want to access the energy, which is why we use a lot of mech tech, manifesting energy cells. The energy is there. You just have to bring it into. And that takes a certain amount of practice as well. But the energy is there. There's no tuning. You are connected directly to the energy. You bring it into your life, and it starts manifesting for you. So when you're using a radionic instrument, this is going to take time to learn how to do the dials. And how good are you at it? Well, I mean, this is a whole training, and I will be coming out with this more elaborate training. We've always tried to make our instruments very simple and very straightforward. And we're coming out with a unit that is just about as automatic as you can get, but you still have to put some sort of rate in there. But we generally supply these for you that you put inside a box, and of course there's important amplification, and there's important broadcasting. Now, this is another problem. So many units is that some people will even electrify their units, but what are they electrifying? They don't have amplifiers inside them. They're putting some electricity through circuits. Well, that isn't a great way to empower units either. So, I mean, you got to know what they're doing. These people don't know what they're doing, period. And they don't seek out things. They're people that are just exploiting others. They have a very low-level understanding of radionics, and they're just really ripping people off. They don't know what they're doing. And then, of course, they get their buddies to come and back them up saying everybody's had success. Well, if success was that easy for this type of, or any technology, including magic, the world would be greatly different and people would be manifesting left and right. All technologies give you an important edge, but you also have to understand the laws of manifesting. Where is the money going to come to from you? So you have to have some way it's going to come to you. What are you going to try and energize where something will come to you? So, if you sit at your house expecting something to happen, well, it's not going to happen. So if you're looking for money, well, how is it going to manifest? So all of these things you have to take into consider and understand the laws of manifestation. What Can I Manifest is a very important book offered by IGOS that talks about this and gives you energetic sigils to bring things into your life. So you need to understand all these things. So I think people are naive, and I don't know how many people do this, but they buy these types of machines and think that these are just slot machines. You're just going to put money in them and boom, it comes out. Well, none of life is like that. And people want to believe that. And your money is soon parted from you because of your desire for fast, instant gratification that takes no skills. Well, this is just not the real world. And it depends on where you're coming from, what your personal problems are, and the all important, do you have channels to bring whatever you want to you? So most people don't. So what does that mean? Well, it's a complicated subject. I've went into this on many lectures. I would advise you to use the search and try and find my manifesting more details. And how does it work? Well, we've broken down what it takes to manifest. Now, it's the same thing that it takes to use a radionic instrument. If you're not centered, meaning if you can't concentrate properly, well, forget about it. You're never going to get the right rates. If you haven't pumped psychic iron to stimulate those areas that allow you to find rates and to dial them in and use a pendulum, well, forget about it. If you don't have basic visualization skills, well, here we go again. Those are the 3 keys. People need to understand the secrets of manifesting. It's not in a machine. A machine is going to assist you. So in general, when you get to tuning a radionic machine, you've got to remember that you have to have sensing skills. Now, most people don't have this. Now, you want to do this, you think it's fun, you're interested in this area, you believe in the technology. Well, that's not enough because you haven't pumped psychic iron. You don't know how to visualize. You can't concentrate past the title of a soft drink. That's about all you can concentrate on, the title. Forget the ingredients in the soft drink. You'll never get through that. So if you can't do that, you're not going to be successful in anything. Now, all of this can be done with a little bit of practice. It's not tough if you use our systems and our tools. You will dramatically improve your life. Now, what does that mean? Well, everybody gets a certain different level of empowerment. Some people have channels where they can bring in lots of success and money, etc. Others don't. Others have higher skills in terms of they can sense with a little bit of practice what they need to do and quickly learn. But it's still a learning process. Learning to tune a radionic machine and tuning it, anyone who's a serious practitioner will tell you that this takes a lot of energy. And tuning 9 dials is probably the equivalent of walking a mile. I mean, it really drains you because you're working with your higher self, and you've got to go through each number on the dial to a large degree. Now, we're going to be showing people in the near future here of how you actually tune a rate-in so that you understand that, and I will go through the process step by step with you. But the problem here is that you've got to understand of how to do it, and you have to make sure you're using the correct dials, but you're going to have to go through the numbers. So theoretically, of course, you're not going to go through every number, but if you have a 9-dial unit with 10 dials on it, well, that's 90 numbers you have to go through. Well, that's going to take a little time. That's going to be stressful. And you have to know how to do it correctly. You have to know how to understand when something is a valid number. All of this is a process, and it's a learning process, and you have to be able to take the time and understand it. So you have to understand what your capacities are. You've got to know how to empower yourself. How do you know how long the machine should be left on? All these things seem to be missing from most people's training. They want to sell you on this. People are training you wrong. They're telling you to do reverse rates. Well, this is not anything to do with most processes. There are many ways of doing rates and so forth, but generally, you're using a more direct rate, which is, what's my rate for bringing me money? But you should be more specific than that, because you should have in mind where that would come from. So these are all part of the process here, which is going to take a little bit of training for most people. So if you get yourself a machine, well, you better know how to use the rubbing plate. And of course, as I said, that's very difficult. I'm not a big fan of that, because what does rubbing and getting a stick mean? Well, how sticky is that stick? So a lot of people claim they like this because it's a very quick way of tuning. I don't, and I don't think it's good for beginners. You should be using a pendulum, and you slowly turn the dial, watching the pendulum before it clicks into a clockwise spin, meaning yes. And then that means that number. excuse me, and you can identify that number. So let's say you got a 7 on a particular rate. Well, if you go up to 8, does the pendulum stop? If you go down to 6, does it stop? When you go back to 7, does it move again? Well, these are ways of proving your number. And you shouldn't be in a rush to tune things anyway. Rubbing plates became popular with a lot of instruments in the late 60s because of the fact that they had 20 or 30 dials. And some of these dials had 100 on the dial. Of course, a lot of them just were 10, but if you have 20 or 30 dials, you're talking about a huge amount of dialing to go through. So the easy way was to use this rubbing or stick plate. So you would turn it, rub, and you get a little stick. Oh, yeah. And you can do this very quickly. And when you have 20 or 30 dials, well, you better be able to do it quickly, or you're going to have to bring a lunch with you, and a shaver, and a bed. So these things, it's hard to believe that. So that's why it went to these rubbing plates, because that was the way to tune it. And it was an easy way to some degree. But as I said, I guess some people can get good at it, but it's a little bit too non-precise for my liking. But if you can try it and you like it and it's something you can use, well, this is all part of the art form that radionics is. And it's an art form. You have to learn your art. You have to figure out what works for you. It is not in the realm, as any of these things are, of, quote, science in the pure sense of that these are machines. They're instruments. You have to learn to play them, and everybody plays an instrument a little differently, depending on how they're built, what capacities they have, etc. So this is just the way the world is. These are not machines you tune in. The only way they become a machine is when somebody supplies you with a rate book. Then you dial the rates in, you put your photograph on there, and that's supposed to be sending you that energy. Now, very few people do this. We will be doing this in the future and coming up with general rates for general problems in life, protection, success, romance, etc. All this we're going to be coming up with rates for. But it's still better if you tune your own rates in. Because your own rates are then, if you're able to do this, and again it takes skill and practice, will manifest for you faster and better because they will be tuned specifically for you instead of getting a general rate for success that everyone uses. Well, you're not everyone. But the general energy is there. That's right. Success is success to a degree, but success is also very specific to you. So tuning in your own rates can be very powerful if you're able to do it. So these are all the problems that people need to understand of how radionics work. So if somebody's going to just sell you the machine and they're not going to teach you how to use it, well, there's a problem there. If you're not interested in learning, there's a problem there. You also have to understand of what are you going to expect from this. And this goes for anything that you get that's an instrument or something different. If you're expecting ridiculous Hollywood results, well, you're the problem, not the seller. Now, everybody has to make their tools sound very tempting. So everyone talks their tools up. And if used properly, most tools will perform amazingly well for people. But if you think you're going to get the numbers for the lottery, or you're going to be able to dial in success, and you're going to have within a few days amazing success, well, it generally doesn't work like that. You're creating an energetic field around you that will then start manifesting in your life, meaning if you're trying, you become a magnet for whatever it is that you desire, and it will come to your life in the best possible way it can for you, because you're specifically different than everyone else. Now, I hope everyone understands this, and this has kind of opened up a way this is, but if you're going to get into a technology that requires you to learn something, which is most of the areas of manifesting in occult science, well, you got to understand you're going to go through a training program. Now, we understand that people don't want to do that. That's why we use mech tech and other things. But even there, you have to concentrate. You have to bring the energies into your aura so it works. It just doesn't make you get it. You just don't get an amulet, hold it, and things pop up in front of you like a bad Hollywood movie. But the energies are there. You don't have to create them. You just have to connect to them. It's a big difference. Now, when you're doing with a radionic machine, is you're creating the energies to a large extent, and then you hook into them and are sending them to you. Now, what does that mean? So the whole idea is it depends on what it is. Success and other things are very vague to a large degree. What does that mean? And how's it going to work in your life? Stockbrokers can manifest hundreds of thousands of dollars. The average person, even with a professional job, is lucky if he can get a 10% raise a year, if that. So everybody has to understand that this is the reality that's out there. The reality that's out there is that it depends on you. So if you don't have lots of ways to make money, well, it's going to be difficult. If you think you're just going to empower yourself and then go to the casino and win, well, it is going to improve your odds. You're going to win more often. It does not make you win. And of course, that's where it really comes down to, and I did a talk on this before, the make technology, and that's what everybody wants. They want to dial something in and it makes me win. It makes me successful. Well, that's not where we're at. The world is at you're empowered, your energies surround you and start manifesting within your life. And that's how radionics and almost any tools work. So everyone has to be very cognizant of this fact. These are fascinating and powerful edges in your life. And without these edges, you generally have no hope whatsoever. With these edges and used consistently, you will push ahead in your reality. But if you expect to use something like this and things pop up in front of you like a bad movie, well, you're going to be disappointed. You've got to understand how everything works and what skills it takes to learn something. Now, as I've mentioned with MechTech amulets, there is no skill per se, even though you're going to have to draw the energies into you to make sure that you're filled with those energies and become that magnet. So if you're going to tune a radionic instrument, well, you're going to have to learn how to do that. It's much more complicated. So this is how part of it. If you want to learn how to do basic things, well, the bottom line is all this takes a certain amount of training, and this is not really what people want to do, which is why we've kind of moved away from training courses. We like people to get tools that they use in their lives. But again, they're tools. And do they work? Yes, they work. But a carpenter can take a hammer and build a house. The average person will be able to build very little or crudely. You're going to have to learn how to even use that tool to just bring energy in it. That's the way the life is. But the bottom line is that these boosts you get from all of this are fantastic, and there's nothing to replace them. But you can't just expect a tool or a hammer to sit in your backyard and to build you a house. You're going to have to go out there and pick up that hammer and learn to use it. And that's how all of life is. And if you're expecting more than that, your expectations are probably way over what people can produce. But make sure that people are going to be there to assist you. Make sure that there is some sort of course. And if you have a question or you have a problem, well, you make sure you're able to contact somebody, and hopefully they're credible enough that they will assist you. Generally, when you run into problems where people don't do that and they get their buddies on there and say that you're the problem, well, this means that you're working with a very fraudulent organization. So be aware of that. Also be aware that maybe this ain't your cup of tea. These, again, are tools and instruments. Are you able to use this? Do you have the basic skills? Well, don't just jump in because you've been huckstered by some company. Make sure that you understand that this is going to take some skill and some time, and that you are willing to commit to it. Now, many people have success with all these things. Does that mean everybody? And what level of success do they really have? Well, nobody keeps records to any great degree. The bottom line is that most people benefit from all of these technologies pretty well in their life. Some soar, and you hear fantastic stories from them. Other people have mediocre success. And so what was it? It depends on the person again, and their dedication and their personal life. So everyone should understand that. And the bottom line is that these things are great empowerments. Without them, as I've mentioned, you really don't have any chance at all. On the other hand, having these tools does not guarantee you Hollywood success. You need to understand that as well. So make sure when you deal with anybody that they're credible, that they're organizations, and if you buy stuff from people that are basically have no idea what they're doing, well, you're going to get what you get, and that's what most people do, and they get a bunch of junk. And because you're not working with skilled organizations and skilled people who have done this for years, you're dealing with people that basically have no background whatsoever, people that have even stated they can't drill through metal. They can only drill through wood. They don't understand anything. They're using the wrong wires. I mean, when you deal with people that are building such crap like that, well, it's pretty much assured that you're going to fail. Until next time.